Welcome back, Pontiac High School. Today's lesson is on foreign policy and national defense. We're going to be getting into some of our other agencies this time that have to do with these aspects. So we've already looked at the State Department and the Department of Defense. Today, we're going to look at some others, beginning with the CIA. The CIA is the Central Intelligence Agency, and it has three roles within the United States. The first role of the CIA is to gather information from the state and defense departments about foreign affairs. So the CIA is not the lone agency here responsible for gathering information. The State Department and the Defense Department are going to be providing a lot of intelligence to the CIA to help the CIA do their job better. Number two, they have to analyze and evaluate all this data coming in. And they have to look for specifically potential threats to the United States. They're not as interested in some of the foreign relations aspects that the state and defense departments are in charge of. They just focus on threats to the United States. And then finally, once they've analyzed that data, they've identified a threat, they need to report their findings to the president and to the National Security Advisor. Those two people, of course, have a lot of say over overall foreign policy aspects. The president is in charge of it all. The National Security Advisor is in charge of the national security potential threats aspect of foreign affairs. One of the best known responsibilities of the CIA and what they are known for worldwide is espionage. Espionage is spying. This is where we do covert actions in foreign nations that help to gather intelligence that we can act upon. So this is actually the United States frequently going into nations without that nation's permission or knowledge to gather information. It's spying. The CIA is well funded, they get a lot of money, and most of its actions are kept secret. We don't know what the CIA is up to. And most members of Congress don't even know what the CIA is up to. There are some committees within Congress that are given some information, and the leadership of the both political parties within Congress are given some basic information about what the CIA is up to. But for the most part, this is just the executive branch acting independently. Now, such an organization can be very dangerous when we've got people who are experts at acting secretly and manipulating governments. And for this purpose, the CIA is specifically forbidden from doing this sort of activity within the United States. The CIA cannot spy on Americans. They are not allowed to do that. We have another organization that can look at Americans called the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, but the CIA is forbidden from doing so. The Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security is our newest cabinet position, and it was created specifically after the September 11th attacks, which struck New York City, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. Once this was created, we realized that we kind of had a problem with gathering information, and sometimes the CIA would have one piece of information, the FBI would have another, and they're both trying to put together a puzzle, not realizing that neither of them have all the pieces. So the Department of Homeland Security was created to gather all of this into a single body in order to help put the pieces of the puzzle together more effectively. Operating responsibilities of the Department of Homeland Security. There are five main things that they do. One, they look at border and transportation security. So if you're coming into the United States, that is border security, and the Department of Homeland Security is looking after it. Transportation as well, so making sure that our commuter railways are safe and that our airports are safe. You go through security at an airport, flying from Detroit to wherever you happen to be going through, you're going to meet the TSA. And the TSA is under the branch of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Authority. Infrastructure protection, that is protecting our bridges and protecting our nuclear facilities to make sure that they don't get blown up. Emergency preparedness and response. So if anything does happen, like another 9/11 or a Hurricane Katrina, we have Homeland Security, which is already prepared and they've looked at a number of scenarios and how they're going to respond to it, and they've got a plan in place. Chemical, biological, or radiological nuclear defense. This is how do we defend ourselves against a chemical attack, a biological attack, which is the real scary one, or nuclear strikes, which are also very scary. Also, information analysis. This is intelligence. So they look at the information from the CIA and the national security apparatus within the United States. All right, so realistic goals. What are they really supposed to be doing? Well, with such a wide area of concern, I mean, this is huge, those 5 things, and thousands of targets in the United States, it's impossible to think that Homeland Security can stop every threat. And in fact, they can't. We've seen a number of occasions where Homeland Security was not able to stop a strike. Mostly these are lone actors or small groups that plan a strike separate from other organizations, but Homeland Security, they cannot stop all of these. An example of one of these was December 25th, 2009, when somebody tried to bomb a plane coming from Boston to Detroit. They tried to set off an explosive and blow everybody up. This was the famous underwear bomber. Homeland Security was not able to stop this from happening, but U.S. citizens, people on the plane, were. So you guys are the last line of defense. If you see something happening, you're the last chance to stop it. This man right here would have blown up a plane, killing 200 people, except for other passengers saw what was going on, recognized that it wasn't right, and acted. All right, NASA. NASA's a fun one. NASA is our space program, and we got this started in 1957, well, in response to 1957, when the Soviet Union, our big competitor in the Cold War, put the first satellite into space. This was a satellite called Sputnik. It was a little thing about the size of a basketball. They got it up in space and it was able to send a very basic signal back down to the Soviet Union. And we panicked because if they can send this little basketball thing up into space, what else can they send up into space? So Congress created the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and NASA is responsible for all U.S. missions outside of Earth's atmosphere. They've also placed satellites into space for private business. They do that because we have the capacity to do it, although there are now private companies that are also getting into the business of putting satellites into space. Achievements of NASA, what have they done? Well, 1958, we sent our own satellites. We were only a year behind the Soviet Union. We were behind them, but only a year. Since then, NASA has expanded its missions to include a manned mission to the moon. We haven't done that in a while, but in 1969, we did put Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin up on the moon. Go US. Satellite missions to explore our solar system and out of our solar system. We now have satellites that have gone beyond the reach of our solar system. We sent robots to Mars, which is pretty cool, and continuing work on the International Space Station, which has been occupied since 2000. It's coming up on the end of its life pretty soon. We'll need to replace that or get something else going, but it's been pretty cool. We've had continuous people in space since 2000. All right, Selective Service System. Within the United States, our military has been filled by volunteers. People who have said, I will go fight, I will defend our nation. But beginning in 1917, the United States had to begin relying on conscription. Conscription is the draft. That's forced military service. And we passed the Selective Services Act to support that and to make it legal. This was because in World War I, we couldn't get enough Americans to sign up. Not enough Americans were willing to go over and fight Europe's wars. So we passed this law, and it now becomes legal for the United States to force you to serve in the military. Drafts were also used in World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. But we have had a fully volunteer military since 1973. The draft remains possible, and at any point in time, you can be drafted. Men, 18 to 26, you can be part of this draft. So those of you who are listening to this lesson who are not yet 18 years old, before you turn 18, you will have to register for the draft. That is a legal requirement. And anytime between age 18 and 26, they can draw your draft number and you can be forced into military service. So pay attention to who you vote for, because if you're not voting, well, then you're, you know, choosing not to have a say in what our government does and our foreign actions. But if you don't want to be drafted, make sure you vote for those people who won't draft you. All American men must register for that draft within 6 months of their 18th birthday. Ladies, equal opportunity. I think you can probably expect sometime in your lifetime, although maybe not before you're 26, that this will be expanded to include women as well. All right, that was the end of today's lesson on foreign services and national defense. We looked at the CIA, we looked at NASA, we looked at the Foreign Selective Service. I hope you learned something today. Farewell.